Why NXT call-ups suffer on the main roster. Welcome back to the ACB Wrestling Talk channel, your main source for wrestling news, topics, discussion, previews, all that kind of good stuff. I am your host, Alexis Carrillo, and over the past few years, more recently now than ever, a lot of fans have been, for lack of a better word, complaining about how NXT call-ups and former NXT superstars were very successful and very much the top stars on NXT are treated and booked on WWE's main roster. Right now we have the example of Bobby Roode, we have the example of Sanity, we have the example of Andrade Cien Almas. Why aren't they being used in bigger spots? Why aren't they on the main events? Why aren't they put in title pictures and in those kind of positions? And I think, and this is just my interpretation of the situation, I think I have a few reasons as to why the NXT call-ups suffer on the main roster. Mainly four. Number one, NXT is what many might consider the college level in comparison to WWE's NFL. NXT is college, WWE is NFL. That's how I'm interpreting this. That's how WWE itself interprets it, or at least that's how I view it. Because even though Triple H has come out on interviews and said, yes, NXT is now more of an international brand. It's now more of a third brand than it is a developmental territory. You ask anyone in WWE, you ask even Vince McMahon himself, and I'm just speculating here, I'm just spitballing here, but I think I could be spot on. You ask them, and they still consider NXT to be a developmental brand. Because essentially, ever since its inception, ever since 2010 when it was a game show concept, to 2012 when they got rid of FCW and transitioned that into NXT and turned it into a perfect combination of the independent scene with WWE's production style, they've always considered it a developmental brand. That's number one. Number two, WWE's product has to be more realistic. We have a lot of fans, again, for lack of a better word, complaining about how WWE's creative team and WWE's television insults the viewer's intelligence. And in many ways they do. They do cater to kids a lot. They do spoon feed you the storylines. They don't make them complicated or any, they don't give you any substance, and it's very just one-dimensional storylines. But you also have to consider, it's not very realistic to consider that someone who's been a part of the independent scene, someone who's been a part of NXT, can just come up to the main roster and just dominate that whole scene. There are exceptions, but again, exception meaning 1 out of every 100, out of every 1,000. I think the last exception of that might be AJ Styles. And if you don't consider that an exception, I would have to go all the way back to Brock Lesnar, how he debuted and they made him the next big thing. Those to me are the exceptions. But again, I have to go back to the college and NFL reference. You have top players in college who come to the NFL who don't succeed right away, who have struggled in the NFL. Doing that on WWE's main roster is essential to me to keep it realistic, to make it feel more real, to make us relate to that. And I think a lot of fans, especially a lot of hardcore pro wrestling fans who follow the trades, who follow the wrestling websites and the rumors and the notes and the backstage talk, they know, just like I know, just like everyone in this whole group know, that WWE has the power to put these NXT stars on the main roster and make them succeed immediately. They know they have that power, but WWE does not cater to the hardcore, smart wrestling fans. They don't cater to that, to them. They cater to the mainstream audience, to the casual viewer. They want to keep them around, and to them, to the mainstream casual viewer, it's not realistic that someone who hasn't been a part of WWE's game, which is the major leagues, can just come in and succeed immediately, no questions asked. And I think there's a disconnect amongst hardcore wrestling fans and mainstream audience on that particular matter. And I think at least the IWC, as, like I said, the smarter, more in the know of things with wrestling, should take a step back and consider that WWE is catering to that casual audience, and the casual audience does not find it realistic, or at least this is my view, they would not find it realistic to have someone just walk in and start challenging for the WWE Championship or for the Universal Championship. That's what I believe. Reason number 3. These NXT call-ups, although they do have talent, we've seen them bring the house down. We've seen them have great matches on NXT, and on the independent scene, they have yet to pay their dues on the main roster. They have yet to prove themselves to not only the casual and mainstream audiences, but also all the agents and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Vince McMahon on the main roster. It's very, very easy, considering, I'm not in that, I'm not, I haven't had that experience, but this is my view, it's very easy to be a big fish in a small pond. But when that big fish in a small pond is put in a situation where he is put in a roster filled with big fish, then he struggles. And you can say, yeah, well, AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Andrade Cien Almas and Bobby Roode and Eric Young and everybody else in between who's gone through the NXT brand and the NXT developmental process, they've paid their dues on the independent scene. They've paid their dues. They've been around for 10, 15 years. That's different. We all know that. WWE is a different beast. It's a different game. You need to pay your dues. You need to be more respectful. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on the main roster that just deflate your push. We know that. We've seen that in the past. These NXT comps have to be more careful, and especially they have to be patient with how they are booked and when and where on the card they are positioned. And finally, reason number 4, there's just too much talent and not enough top spots on the main roster. Okay, I've seen it on social media. I've seen the reactions. I've seen how, even this past August at SummerSlam, a lot of fans were complaining, again, for lack of a better word, complaining about how Rusev and Andrade Cien Almas were on the kickoff show. They were on the pre-show. When they were, just a few years ago, they were main eventing NXT. They were on top spots in NXT. May I remind you that there are also top guys like a Bobby Roode, like Sanity, like the Usos, like many more, or even someone who a lot of people don't like Jinder Mahal. He's a former WWE champion. He wasn't on the card. He wasn't even on the kickoff show. He wasn't even in any type of main storylines. The same on this past Hell in a Cell. Shinsuke Nakamura, U.S. champion. Not even involved, not even mentioned. There are just too much talent in WWE, and they are constantly looking to add more and more talent to their already overflooded pool of talent, and not enough top spots, not enough good stories, not enough championship level material. And a lot of fans have to take that into consideration. A lot of fans have to realize that not everyone can be put in a top spot every single time. Take Asuka into consideration. Yes, WWE Creative has botched her at every turn. I agree with that. They have misused her. But just a few months ago, she was in the main event of WrestleMania, and now you're trying to elevate Charlotte. You're trying to elevate Becky Lynch. You're trying to position Carmella and the Iconics and everyone, and Naomi and everyone in between as top stars in the women's division. Asuka had her time. She needs to take a step back and let others take that role. Why? Because this is WWE. This is a revolving door. And you need to have patience. You need to have that understanding. We as a smart audience, as the audience in the know, as the hardcore wrestling audience, we should have to take a step back. We should know when to take a step back because, you know, again, I keep using the word complaining, but I just can't find a better word for it. But I just see a lot of complaining about how WWE doesn't listen to its fans, about how WWE doesn't want to push these guys on a main roster when they know how talented they are. And I get that. I really do. And I realize that. I've seen them on the NXT. I know what they can do in that ring. But like I said, I go back to the casual viewer versus the hardcore viewer. The casual viewer doesn't know what goes on in NXT. They don't tune in every week. They don't watch the takeover events. They don't know what they're capable of. We do. We, the hardcore wrestling audience, the internet wrestling community, we know what they can do in that ring. The casual audience does not. The WWE caters to the casual audience. They want to keep them around because they know the hardcore wrestling audience, they might complain, they might like a lot of stuff, they might hate a lot of stuff, but they will stick around for the long haul. And it's a lot easier to lose a casual viewer than it is a hardcore viewer. That's how I see it. That's how I see this entire NXT call-up situation. I may be wrong. I may be right. I certainly can't say that I'm right. This is just how I understand it. This is just how I view the situation. Like I said, I may be wrong. I just wanted to put this out there. Wanted to give you my perception of this whole NXT call-ups on the main roster situation. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Leave your thoughts and comments on the comment section below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What do you disagree with me on? What do you agree with me on? Leave your thoughts and comments on the comments section below. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you dislike this video, hit the dislike button. And leave me some feedback. If you like wrestling news, topics, discussion, previews, consider subscribing. That's it for me. Till next time.